Okay, welcome back. Podcast number two. Podcast number two. We're here. By the way, podcast is not called podcast. You may have noticed it's actually called Bubba's Ballads, which is a name that was given to me by Chris, who was the one who pushed so hard for me to have a podcast. He came up with the name Bubba's Ballads, which is a fantastic name. We also considered Jonathan's Journeys, which I think is also very good. I may just call my autobiography Jonathan's Journey. Is it autobiography if I do it myself or if somebody else does it? I don't know. Anyway, but podcast is named Bubba's Ballads. So here we are, podcast number 2, another ballad by me, except for in talking, instead of in music. I don't think that was correct grammar at all, but we're just going to move past that. Today's podcast is about our wonderfully beautiful co-host, Gotchem Jr., the rubber duck, my very favorite pal. We're talking about why he's here, how he got here, how he came into existence. Why do I have this duck? And why do I talk to him? That's a story, which is why we're telling it. So, to tell the story of Gotchem, we have to go way, way back. All the way to, I think, my junior year of high school. Well, kind of the summer right after junior year. It was like the summer right after junior year. So what's that? 2019? I think that's 2019. In fact, I'm positive it was 2019. We're going way, way back to 2019. I had this wonderful group of friends, and they were like, hey, let's go up the canyon and have a cookout. And that sounded fantastic, so I joined them. And we had like our food and our camp chairs and fire. And we drove all the way up the canyon, found our campsite, and as we're getting out and we're unloading all of these things, there was a rubber duck sitting in the back of the car. And it was a construction rubber duck, so it had like a hard hat and like a little shovel. And as it fell out, one of my friends, she caught the duck. And I don't know if she was trying to say like catch him or I caught him or whatever she was trying to say. What it came out as was Gotchem. So this rubber duck falls and she just screams Gotchem and then catches the duck. And we all thought that was really funny, so we named the duck Gotchem. Later that summer, by the way, that was a good night to camp out. It was good, I guess. Not camp out, the cookout. It was good. Not really the point of the story, though. Anyway, fast forward just a couple weeks or so. Actually, fast forward a couple months in August. On August 5th, 2019, my mom took me and my sisters downtown. We went to historic Main Street and we went into this little tiny shop that was called Goofy Guys. And it sells like candy and like these wacky toys and just silly things. And we go into Goofy Guys and my mom, she says, buy anything you guys want. And I was like, anything I want? She says, anything you want. And I immediately turned around to this bucket. It was made out of wood. It was a crate. I turn around, there's this crate, and it is filled. It is filled to the brim with rubber ducks, little tiny rubber ducks, the smallest little rubber ducks I have ever seen. And I picked one up, and it squeaked so beautifully. And I said, this is what I want. And it's only worth 25 cents. I said, I want this duck. And my mom, she gave me the weirdest look. She said, out of everything in the store, you want this 25-cent duck. And my sisters are there grabbing like handfuls of candy or like these weird little toys. And I says, yes, this is what I want. I want this rubber duck and I don't want anything else. And my mom said, okay. And so she bought me this little tiny rubber duck. And in honor of my friends and that fun cookout experience we had, I named the duck Gotchem Jr. And that is how Gotchem Jr. came into my possession. Anyway, so now I have Gotchem Jr. and I decide I'm going to take him to marching band practice so I can show all my friends and tell them that his name is Gotchem Jr. and how wonderful that is. And so I take him, and then after rehearsal, I'm showing him, and everybody thinks he's just the cutest thing, and we're all squeaking him and having so much fun. And then there's this little trombone player, and she's a couple years younger than I am. So I'm like, how old was I? I was like 16. Wait, no. I guess I was like 17 at this point. This little like 14-year-old trombone player, she comes up and she's like, we need to take a photo shoot with this duck right now. I was like, a photo shoot? And she's like, yeah, I have my friend here and she has a camera. And it was like a real camera, not like a phone. And so we started taking pictures of Gotchem Jr. and we went like, we took pictures of him in the band room. We went outside and found some leaves and took pictures of him with the leaves. We went to this playground and we took pictures of him and we took a video of him sliding down the slide and learning his letters because there was like an alphabet wall. And so we're just taking him around, having a photo shoot, having just the time of our lives. And the trombone player, she says, we need to make him an Instagram. And I was like, okay, I will make him an Instagram. So by the way, I am not tech savvy or social media savvy. At this point in my life, I had absolutely zero social media. I used to have a Facebook, but I deleted it when my ex-girlfriend started sending me death threats. So we got rid of that and I had no social media whatsoever until I started making this Instagram. And I didn't really know how to do it. I don't know how you mess up creating an Instagram account, but I did. Because I started making the Instagram account and just like, it wasn't working. So I went back and I made sure the email was correct and I made sure that this was correct and that was correct. And like, I couldn't get it to go through. So I went back and like edited like the name and like, I tried everything I could think of to get it to work and it just wasn't working. So I canceled it, completely blanked it out, closed out of Instagram completely, reopened it and tried again to make this account for my rubber duck. And and I got a pop-up comes from Instagram and it says, this account has been permanently terminated for violating the terms and agreements, which is ridiculous because I never even made the account. I couldn't get it to work the first time and I literally never made the account, but somehow I failed so bad that without having even finished creating the account, I somehow violated the terms and agreements and got the account permanently terminated. So that's cool. So then I went back to the girl and I was like, I can't do it. I can't make Instagram. I don't know how to do it. And so she took it and I stood there next to her and she walked me through as she made the Instagram and I told her what email to use and what password to set and she did it for me. And actually for the longest time, there was her and two other people who had access to the Instagram because they had to help me make it. And I was away from the Instagram for like a long time. Not that I use it much anyway, but I was away for like a while, and I had to reach back out to these people and ask them for the login information to my own Rubber Ducks Instagram account because I couldn't remember what it was. Anyway, so it took me 3 tries to make an Instagram for my Rubber Duck, and I didn't even do it myself. I had to have a 14-year-old girl help me. But so now Instagram exists for Rubber Duck, and I'm like, hey, this is now, I guess, a serious part of my life. I have this Rubber Duck and an Instagram account dedicated to it. Literally, the only social media that I own is an Instagram account for my Rubber Duck. And I did okay. I posted a few things for a while, but I like I said, I just don't do social media that much. So I wasn't using it too terribly often. Anyway, but I did have my duck, and I kept him around with me for a long time. And he was my favorite little guy. And we were also going through some wild things at that time in my life. And I was going to school 25 minutes away. Well, that's rounding up. I was 23 minutes and 23 seconds away from home where I was going to school. And I know it's 23 minutes and 23 seconds because I had a classical piece that I listened to that was just a little bit longer than that. It was the Festivals of Rome, I think. And as I would drive to school, I would start it. I would start the CD right as I left my driveway, and it would end right as I got to school. And the track was 23 minutes and 23 seconds long, I think. So I think, anyway, I was a while away from home. It took a drive to go get to and from school every day. And, well, sometimes I'd listen to music. I usually listen to music. But, you know, sometimes you just have a hard day and you need to talk to somebody about it. But I was 23 minutes away from home, so I couldn't. That's a long time to wait. So I'd put my Rubber Duck on my dashboard and I'd talk to him as I drove home, which was actually super fun. Which even before I got my Rubber Duck, I would do that. I would talk to myself as I drove home sometimes. But having the Rubber Duck, I feel like I looked a lot less crazy. You know, if I were to drive by and I just happen to glance at somebody and they're just talking to themselves, I'd think, okay, that's a little weird. But if I drive by them and they're talking to a Rubber Duck, actually, you know what? I think that would be a little more weird. It makes me feel better, though. I enjoy talking to my Rubber Duck. So I would talk to him as I drove home from school. Sometimes just for fun. Sometimes I had a funny story. Sometimes I had a bad day and I just let it all out. And I talked to my Rubber Duck on my drive home. And then tragedy struck. There was a day. So previously mentioned ex-girlfriend who we don't like and we don't talk about very much. She sat like right in front of me because I played trumpet and she played clarinet. So she was right there in front of me. And I kept my Rubber Duck on my music stand during band. And cause, I don't know, because it's just fun to have a Rubber Duck with you. And it was my senior year of high school, and my whole thing senior year was have fun, even if that means acting like a kid. And it totally meant acting like a kid because I had a preschooler backpack that looked like a bumblebee, and I always kept it stocked, filled with fruit snacks because I just didn't have very complicated classes my senior year. I had one notebook, a couple of pencils, and a bunch of fruit snacks. And that's what was in my backpack. And my Rubber Duck. My Rubber Duck was also there. And so then it was a vibe. It sounds silly. I had so much fun. Senior year was a blast. Highly recommend to any of you out there. It's a real pick-me-up to have a bumblebee backpack and a Rubber Duck always with you all the time. And fruit snacks. The fruit snacks really helped. Actually, I have funny stories about fruit snacks, but that's not what we're talking about. We can do that some other day. Anyway, so I had my rubber duck on my music stand. And sometimes I'd squeak him because it made all my friends laugh, and all the people around me, they thought it was adorable. They loved the little rubber duck. And so every now and then I'd squeak him. Not a ton. I mean, I probably shouldn't have been squeaking him at all. I can see how that would be annoying, but it's not like I was squeaking it all the time. Maybe once or twice a day, you know? It's not like I was doing it all the time. But ex-girlfriend who sat right in front of me did not enjoy it whatsoever. But I chose to just ignore that because she didn't like it when I breathed or existed. So everybody else loved the rubber duck. I'm not going to let her bring me down. So I kept the rubber duck. And one day she picked up Gotchem Jr. and she threw him across the room at the trash can. She missed the trash can, but she did make it clear that that was her intent, to throw it away. So I went and I picked up my rubber duck and I just put him back on my stand, and I was mad. But I wasn't going to do anything about it because that's scary. Anyway, so she tried to throw away my rubber duck. And then the week after this happened, class was getting done. We put away all of our chairs and our stands and stuff, and we had a few minutes left of class, but I had to use the bathroom. So I put Gotchem Jr. in the pocket of my backpack and set my backpack down on the floor, and I went out into the hall, and I used the bathroom, and then I came back. I put on my backpack, and I went to my next class, and I reached in my backpack to grab Gotchem Jr. out. And he wasn't there. He wasn't there. And I looked everywhere. I dug through all my fruit snacks, looked all over my backpack, couldn't find Gotchem Jr. anywhere. After class was over, I retraced my steps all the way back to the band room. I was looking all over the hall. I was looking on benches, everywhere. I couldn't find him. I just couldn't find Gotchem Jr. I got so sad, and I looked for him for like weeks. I was keeping my eye out for him, trying to find him. I thought maybe he was in my backpack. Maybe I brought him home. Like, I don't know. I thought maybe I didn't put him in my backpack. Maybe I put him in my locker or my trumpet case. I looked everywhere I could for this rubber duck, and I could not find him. And I am convinced. People tell me I'm crazy, but I think they're wrong. I think that ex-girlfriend threw him away or stole him or something. Because I looked everywhere. I looked everywhere for my rubber duck, and I could not find him anywhere. Anywhere. Gone. And I looked for a long time. So I think it was her doing. Nobody else believes me. And that may make me sound a little bit crazy. But if you knew her, you wouldn't be surprised. Anyway, so my duck was gone. I was so distraught. Probably more distraught than a 17-year-old should be about a rubber duck. I was devastated. I had no one to talk to on my drive home anymore. Not a rubber duck. No rubber duck in my backpack. No rubber duck to talk to. Tragic. My only piece of social media, the Instagram for my rubber duck, was now useless. I was very, very sad boy. Very sad. And everybody knew I was sad about it, which is also kind of sad, but that's okay. And my mom, the greatest mom in the world. We love my mom. I love my mom. She did the kindest thing I think ever. Well, first, we went back to Goofy Guys to see if we could buy another rubber duck, but they were gone. They'd sold out and decided not to restock, so they had no more rubber ducks. And I asked them if they were going to get more, and they said probably not. So I was tragic. I was sad. It was tragic. But my mom, she went online and she looked for tiny rubber ducks, and she bought me a new rubber duck. And she gave it to me, and it was such a happy day. I did not know how to tell her that this rubber duck, although adorable, was smaller than Gotchem Jr. and also had different eyes. And so I couldn't use this duck to replace Gotchem Jr. But I was still so thrilled and so happy that I had a new rubber duck. And I'm so thankful for my mom and how wonderful she is. And so now this rubber duck, this tinier rubber duck, that is now Gotchem Jr.'s sister, and her name is Ruby, because I thought that was funny because Ruby duck, it sounds like rubber duck. So her name is Ruby. She wears a scarf. And so I had this little tiny rubber duck, and her name was Ruby, and she was now following me around. She was my dashboard duck now. And the reason she had a scarf was because it was winter and she was going to get cold. So we gave her a little scarf. And anyway, and then my birthday came around, and my girlfriend at the time, new girlfriend, not ex-girlfriend. Well, I mean ex-girlfriend now, but not same ex-girlfriend. Anyway, my birthday came around, and she gave me a rubber duck for my birthday that was orange because it's my favorite color, and she knew how much I missed my rubber duck. This actually might have been before my mom got me Ruby. In whatever order those two things happened, my mom got me a rubber duck, my girlfriend got me a rubber duck. And then since I had just recently graduated high school, my parents got me another rubber duck that... Oh, the orange rubber duck, his name is Tony because he's striped like a tiger, like Tony the Tiger. Anyway, his name is Tony. And then I have a graduation duck that my parents gave me when I graduated high school that has a graduation cap and is holding a diploma. His name is Grady. And that kind of started, now I have rubber ducks for important things. So anyway, so now I have these rubber ducks, but I still don't have a Gotchem Jr. and I was very sad. I started serving my mission, and I served a service mission, so I got to stay at home and continue living with my family while I was serving my mission. One day, my sister Dakota was visiting, and she was over at our house, and my youngest sister Lexi wanted to go on an adventure. So I think Dakota, Lexi, and Trisha all left and they went on an adventure. And I was staying at home, and I'd looked for rubber ducks everywhere. By this point, it had been like 2 years almost. I'd been looking for rubber ducks. I'd seen lots of rubber ducks, and none of them were quite right. But Lexi and Dakota and Trisha come home this day, and they... Guys, this is one of my more ridiculous stories. It's kind of embarrassing and makes me look kind of weird and childish, but I'm choosing to not be ashamed. Anyway, Lexi comes home and she walks in the door and she says, "Guess what I bought today? It was only 25 cents. We went to Goofy Guys and I have a rubber duck." And I shot up from the couch and I ran over to her and I grabbed the rubber duck out of her hand and I examined it like with a scrutinous eye, and I couldn't believe it. It was the right duck. It was the right duck. It had the right eyes. The beak was the right color. It was the right size. Goofy Guys had the rubber ducks back. I could finally get Gotchem Jr. I got so excited. I put on shoes without even putting on socks, and I ran outside and I got in my car and I started driving to Goofy Guys. And all four of my sisters run out of the house and they're waving their arms and they're telling me to stop. And so I do. I stop and I roll down the windows and they're like, "Bubba, Goofy Guys is closed. It closed for the night. It opens again." I think it was a Saturday. They're like, "It opens again on Monday." And I was so sad. I was so excited. I was thrilled. Literally, like, There have been very few times in my life I was as happy as I was in that moment. But then I was sad because I couldn't go get my duck for another 2 days. I was so sad. And I went back inside and I laid on the couch. And I was just sad, but also so thrilled, so excited. So on Monday, after I was done serving at my service site, I brought a quarter with me when I served that day. And I kept the quarter in my pocket. And I went as soon as I was done with my service site, I drove to Goofy Guys and I went to the crate full of rubber ducks and I dug through, like, picking up ducks, and like this one had a scratch on its eye. This one had, like, its beak was a little faded. This one had a lopsided head. So I just dug through until I found the perfect duck. And it was Gotchem Jr. was back. Exactly the same as he was when I left. And I brought my quarter and my rubber duck up to the Goofy Guys employee. And I had the biggest, probably dumbest smile on my face. And I said, please, I want to buy this rubber duck. And, and they gave me kind of a strange look. And they were like, okay. And I gave them the quarter. And they gave me the rubber duck. And I went outside and I sat in my car and I started squeaking him. And it was Gotchem Jr. was back. The king had returned. I was so happy. I'm thinking of that meme from, what is it? How to Train Your Dragon 2. The one that says, you're as beautiful as the day I left you. Or whatever it goes. And it's true. I'd waited 2 years for this duck, and he'd finally arrived. He was back. He was in my hands. I was so happy. So happy. And so now I have my rubber duck back. And he has been with me through the thick and the thin. Is that how that phrase goes? The thick and the thin? Anyway, he's been through it all. He was with me for the rest of my mission. I had him in my pocket when I gave my homecoming talk. I kept him with me when I traveled with the battalion. So he's been all across the country with me. I had him when I was driving from, I kept him with me, and then he was with me in my pocket when I flew from North Carolina to Utah. And then when I drove from Utah to North Carolina, he was on my dashboard the whole time. I think Ruby was there too. I had Gotchem and Ruby on my dashboard for that entire journey. And then, yeah, and he's been with me for all the important events. He's in my pocket every concert. I keep him in my backpack. He's always in my car when I'm on a long car ride in case I need somebody to talk to. It sounds really silly. I am probably way more attached to this duck than any person should be to an inanimate object. But he is my pal. I love Gotchem Jr. As strange as that sounds. I love this duck. And then I need to buy a duck for when, for having finished my mission. That's been on my to-do list for a while, to get a missionary duck. But while I was serving my mission, I was serving at the high school as like one of the brass directors for their marching band. And at the end of the season, I did not told these kids about my thing for rubber ducks, but they gave me a rubber duck that was golden for the brass. And they gave me this rubber duck, and I thought that was really just sweet of them, first of all, but also it was a rubber duck. How cool is that? So I had them name him for me. So his name is Denny. And then I was serving at an elementary school as a tutor and a janitor. And I was just hanging out at the office one day talking to the office ladies, and they were like, "Oh, by the way, we got like all these extra erasers. Do you want one?" And I was like, "Sure, why not?" And they handed me an eraser shaped like a rubber duck. And I got so excited, and I told them, I said, "You guys have no idea how much this means to me. This is fantastic. Like, I love rubber ducks." Um, and so now I have a rubber duck from the school, and it's that rubber duck's name is Reese because the school's name was Reese, and so I named her after the school. And then when actually I probably don't need to get myself a mission duck, because when I got released from my mission, all the missionaries I was serving with gave me a rubber duck, and some of them signed the ducks, some of them just gave me a duck. Some of them gave me rubber frogs because I used to draw frogs all the time. I still draw frogs all the time. I gave a lesson on how to draw frogs while on my mission. So they gave me rubber ducks and rubber frogs. They don't really have names because there are so many of them. And half of them are signed anyway. So I guess I do have mission ducks. We'll just count those as my mission ducks. So anyway, so I've got Gotchem Jr., who's the first duck. Ruby, who was given to me by my mom. I have Tony from my high school girlfriend. I have Grady from graduation. I have Denny from the high school, Reese from the elementary school, and now I have all my missionary ducks from all the missionaries that I served with. And I plan on, for the rest of my life, having rubber ducks for all the important things that I do. So maybe I'll get one when I graduate college. I don't know. And we'll see. So yeah, that's the story of Gotchem Jr., why I love this duck so much, and why I love rubber ducks, and why I now collect rubber ducks. I don't collect them just to collect them. I collect them specifically for important events in my life. So yeah, there you go. That's the rubber duck story. I hope you enjoyed. Bye.